What's going on, everyone? David Elliott here. And in today's video, we're going to continue on with part 2 of our video series of a pre-underwriting versus a full underwriting. Now, for this particular video, we're going to demonstrate the efficiency of using something such as this to pre-underwrite your deals quickly. And we're going to look at the nuances and the troubles that you're going to be faced with a full underwriting when you've just acquired a new lead. So let's begin. I'm going to pull up the property right now, and we're going to do a very quick pre-underwriting on this property. We're going to start from scratch, and I'm going to show you just how easy it is to use something like this. For further info or even access to this pre-underwriting calculator, you can check the description below. So we see here that it's listed here right now at $363,000. If you recall, this was one of our properties from our previous video in part 1, where we already knew that this was going to be a hybrid deal. Now that we have the purchase price, what we're going to have to take a quick look at, as we did before, is the rental value. Now, according to Zillow, we're seeing that's going to be $2,000 a month. I'm going to lower that to $1,900. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pre-underwrite this deal in a minute. And you're going to see just how quickly something like this can be done. So let's start the timer. We're going to put our purchase price at $363. We're going to come over here to the rent value. We're going to put in $1,900. This information will update as more variables are plugged in. Remember, we're looking at the best case scenario. We're going to pull up PropStream real quick. We see that the encumbrance is going to be $287, it looks like, for total encumbrance. And then we'll have to pay a 15% tax. Agent commission will be roughly 3%. We're going to start at $35,000, which will be just under the 10%. We're going to add 3.7 towards our sales fee. There will be no capital gains here. We may decide to do an assignment fee of maybe $10,000. And because we're doing a hybrid deal, let's cap this over and let's put this at $400,000. Okay, perfect. We did everything in under a minute. So this pretty much concludes on the efficiency of using something like this. I know I went through this real quick. If you did not see part 1 or the previous videos, I highly suggest you take a quick look at those pre-underwriting examples. But what we're looking to do in a situation like this, when a property is brought to us from either an agent, or let's say it's coming from a lead from PropStream when you had done a particular filter, you want to be able to look at this property and know instantaneously, as quick as possible, do you have a deal? Do you have a deal that works for you as the buyer or as the investor? And is it something that the seller is willing to take? So, we could structure terms, creative terms, fairly quickly. This did not take me long to do. And immediately I can see that I'm going to be just at the 12% entry fee. I can see here that my worst case scenario, I'm going to be cash flowing $274 a month. So this is worst case scenario. And even under a worst case scenario, I know that I have a deal. Yes, the cash on cash percentage is quite low, but this can fluctuate, right? We could always increase the rent value after we do a full rental comp comparison. This number will go up too, so long as there's no type of miscellaneous repairs that are too excessive on the property. So overall, super simple to use. You can definitely look at a deal that you are interested in, such as something like this, and know under a minute, is this a deal that you want to pursue, and is it a deal that the seller is willing to accept? Now, we can see here that the seller's best case scenario is going to be $61,000 received at closing. I may want to just bump this up ever so slightly to, let's say, $25,000. So I might even come up to that 10%, which is the $40,000 down, just so they can get a little bit more money at closing. But we can also see here that the agent commission at a conventional offer at full price, the agent for this property is going to make just under 11 grand. Whereas if they were to work with you as a buyer and present the terms to their client, they'd be walking away with an additional grand at closing, and they'd be netting $12,000 in commission. So super helpful. Now what we're going to do is we're going to be doing a full underwriting of the property, and I'm going to illustrate to you the problems. There are some major problems associated with doing a full underwriting when you're simply just trying to know the exact two questions mentioned before. Do you have a deal, and is this deal worth pursuing? Is it a deal that the seller is willing to accept, right? If you can't answer those questions fairly quickly, you're wasting your time with a full underwriting. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to pull up an example of what a underwriting calculator would look like, a full underwriting calculator. This would be one example. It is a fairly simple underwriting example. I guess you could say this to be more of a beginner underwriting calculator. I've got another one here that's a little bit more intermediate, and we can see here that it's a little bit more, advanced, but still pretty easy to use. And then once you start getting into some more complex underwriting, we get into something more like this, where it really becomes advanced and you're really looking at things in a finer level of detail. So what we're going to do is we're going to be looking at this in that finer level of detail. And we're going to take a look at that purchase price again. I think it was at $363,000. Yep. So we're going to plug that in. A purchase price of $363,000. And we're going to put in our down payment of $40,000. Our creative purchase price was going to be $400,000, so we're actually going to be well over. We'll have to adjust this ever so slightly. What we're going to do is we're going to do that over, and we're now at the 10% mark. We don't know what the current market value is, being that this is a declining market right now in the month of September, but we could get a fairly good idea of what the Zillow property estimate is. This may be closer to $340 in terms of market value. So we're going to plug that in up here. And we're going to come and start filling out this information. So we're going to have to comp out the rent now. Now, the way that we did it before with our pre-underwriting calculator, we simply took the rental projections here and we took away $100 just to be on the pessimistic point of view. But now that we're doing a full underwriting, we're going to actually have to comp out the rent, which is going to take up time. And time is of the essence when you're just trying to make an offer on a property. So this is the property address here. I did plug this in ahead of time into Zillow Rental Manager. And what we're going to do is we're going to try our best to comp out the rental values in that area. So what I'll do now is I'll change the miles distance from the home to 1. I'll change everything to a single family property. I'll come over here to beds and change that to 4. I believe this is a 4-bed. Yep. And we're going to change active rentals to within 30 days. Okay, so that will narrow everything down quite a bit. What we're looking for is these 3 criteria: 4 beds, 3 baths, 2,073 square feet. I don't care about the property photos right now. What I care about is, can I find a equivalence of the property that I'm interested in? Can I find an equivalence either that has already been sold and is tenant occupied or is active right now? So let's see what kind of rental comps we can find. I'm seeing a lot of 4.2s at the moment. Okay, it looks like 1,800 square feet at a 4-bed, 3-bath. The highest value I'm seeing is about 2,200 a month. I don't want to be looking at the highest values, just being that we are in a inflated market at this moment in time. And so I want to be realistic with our rent. I think $2,200 for rent is pushing it. Let's check out here on the left-hand side to see if we could find anything better. We can see here that this is a 4-bed, 3-bath with even more square footage, and it's renting for $2,000 a month. So this is definitely a much better rental comp comparison, especially for a tenant's point of view. I think what I'm going to go with in terms of just a rental comp, I think I am going to follow what Zillow had said, and I'm going to rent this one out at $2,000 a month. I think that would be a safe starting point. So we can minimize this. We'll come over here to monthly rent. We're going to put in $2,000 for monthly rent. We're going to have operating expenses. As an investor, as a buyer, you really want to set money aside for operating expenses. We're going to put in 10% for operating expenses. We'll put in 10% for repair reserves. And now we have an issue. Now the issue comes in, if we go back to our property, this is currently listed. And being that it's currently listed, and we know that this is a hybrid deal, we do not have access to the PITI of this property. Now, this is something that you could possibly estimate, but you don't want to be estimating off a prompt stream. You really want to get a hard-held copy of the most recent mortgage statement from the seller. And the last thing you are going to do as a buyer or as an investor is have one or even two phone calls with the agent and seller and ask them to hand over their mortgage statements. It's just very unlikely. Nobody's going to be giving out that kind of private information. So we run into an issue where you now want to do a full underwriting, but you can't. You can't do a full underwriting without knowing what your PITI is for the property. You can get a fairly good estimate of what it may be. I might be able to calculate the principal and interest, but taxes will always differ from year over year, so will the insurance rates. And so you're not going to have access and have that full credibility of doing a true full underwriting until you have received a yes from the seller. That is why I find it highly advisable to pre-underwrite your creative leads. One, you want to know if it's going to cash flow under a worst case scenario. So if we pull back our other calculator here, we see that under a worst case scenario, it will cash flow. Two, is this a deal that I want to pursue? Yes, it is one that I would want to pursue. I may want to wait until that current ask price drops ever so slightly. I might be looking for a $20,000 or $30,000 purchase price reduction, so we can get in at that property at $333,000 as opposed to $363,000. This is definitely a property that I would want to pursue. The reason being is that there is a fairly large seller carryback, and I am coming up on price. It is always advised to give the seller their current ask price, because you can always come up on price, but you can never come down. And so although I am trying to incentivize the seller right now by going over their current ask price, it is not ideal as an investor. I'd much rather pay them $363 and only have to pay out their gross equity up front, as opposed to having a large seller carryback, which is now due to them, on or before 36 months. So not highly advised. And you can now see that although we have a deal that might be worth pursuing, conventionally speaking, the seller is going to be a lot more enticed by just taking cash or a conventional offer. So this was one of those properties that we had labeled as a C, meaning, see you later. We'll check in on you, within 30 or 45 days, because it's not exactly a deal that the seller is willing to take. And in terms of the full underwriting, it's going to get very complicated, messy, and multiple variables are going to be required for you to fill everything out accordingly. Do not spend 10 to 15 minutes with a full underwriting without even receiving a yes from the seller. Get a yes from the seller first that they are open to creative. Once they are open to creative, you can then present them a very simplistic offer, such as something like this, where you could even take a screenshot, and you could take a screenshot of this, send it out to your seller, send it out to your agent, and they will have a full breakdown of what it is that they can expect at closing. So highly, highly efficient. And, in under a minute, we'll know that we have a deal. So I do not recommend a full underwriting, making that fully, notable right now. Do not spend time with a full underwriting without receiving a yes from the seller first. There are many variables that need to be taken into consideration. Especially your biggest issue is going to be the PITI, honestly. If you can't get that information up front from the seller or from the agent right away, you could estimate from PropStream, and you could try to kind of cheat your way through it by even going through the monthly payments option here on Zillow. There is a cheat sheet here, which I will show you. The cheat sheet would be going through monthly costs. You'd be looking at your yearly property taxes and your yearly home insurance. So this would be your little cheat sheet where you could grab these two variables plus the principal and interest off of PropStream. But again, it is just an estimate. And if we're going to just estimate our PITI, then you might as well just pre-underwrite the deal in the first place and not spend 10 to 15 minutes filling out all of this required information when you are simply having estimated numbers to begin with. So I hope my point is clear here. Pre-underwriting the deal really needs to be taken into consideration and really be implemented as the buyer and as the investor. And, you can find this calculator here in the description below. Until next time, have a great day, everybody. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you on the next video. Take care.